Bonjour, bonjour, bonjour. Are you wasting your time with the way that you learn French? It is the topic of today. I see some of you are definitely not wasting their time because the chat is already pretty active. So it's really cool to arrive here and find that we have already at least 3 people in the chat. So hi, Connie. It's sweet to have you back. I'm glad to hear that you're better. We have Linda here and Omo Waleo. So that's great. Thank you guys for being here. If you're watching and you haven't said hi in the chat yet, please say hi. It's always nice to know who's here. And if you are watching the replay, welcome. Please leave a comment. I always love to know who has come here after the fact. And if you have any question or anything, the comment section is wide open for you at any time when you are watching the replay. And of course, if you are live right now, the comment section is here to ask your questions or to comment or just to have a chat between yourselves. I know that there are a lot of new people here. We have recently hit 1,500 followers on this channel. This is amazing. So thank you so much for being here and for listening to my ramble every week or every time that you log into the channel. Today, the topic that we have is all the hacks that can save you time, or on the flip side, all the things that you might be doing right now, which are actually useless. So as it is now usual, there is a little worksheet which you can get on my Telegram channel. So if you are subscribed to my emails, you will get the worksheet in your email box every week, a couple of days before the live, typically on Friday. And if you are not subscribed to my email, or if you are watching this in the faraway future, you can always get the past worksheets from the Telegram channel, and the link is in the description of this video. Yeah, I think it is. It's there automatically, so you can get this worksheet and all the past worksheets also in the Telegram channel. So that's the topic for today. I need to tell you that I still have a couple of spots for one-on-one coaching with me. If you would like to have my help personally, I believe the link for the program, which is the French transformation, is also in the description. As usual, if you have any question, I'm happy to answer them. And you can always contact me via the form on my website if you want to ask something personally, which would not be in public on YouTube. With that said, let's get into the content for today. Oh, wait, I need to tell you, especially if you're new, that I always have a topic prepared for those live. It always goes for about 1 hour. Well, it's typically always 1 hour. So for me, it's from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And in the Eastern time zone, it's from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. So in New York. And of course, you can calculate for your own time zone. So I always have a little bit of content ready with some hacks, often 7 hacks, just like the number 7. But also I make sure to keep some time open in this session so that you can bring your questions and ask anything about the topic of the day, but also about French in general. So I'm always happy to answer any question you have. So this is basically like an office hour time when you can come to your favorite French teacher, or, well, I'm a French coach, but I'm trained as a French teacher. I have a master's degree in French teaching. So that's basically my trained profession. And then I decided to become a coach. But any question that's about learning French is welcome in the chat. If it's about what I'm saying right now, you can ask it at the same time. And if it's about something completely different, please wait until after I'm done with the topic of the day and just ask your question afterwards. So sweet that you're all here. Let's get into it. So the topic for today is, are you wasting your time learning French? And I will share 7 shortcuts that can really save you a lot of time and also a lot of money, because unfortunately, sometimes French classes can be expensive. And sometimes they also just teach things that you just shouldn't be learning at all. Or either you shouldn't be learning it at all, or you shouldn't be learning it right now because it's not what corresponds to your current either goals or current level. And really, it's something that I would like you to keep in mind, because sometimes it's sneaky, sometimes it's entertaining, or sometimes it's a well-established school thing that everybody does, but it's actually counterproductive. So we're going to look into that. And we have Cynthia here. Hi, Cynthia. Sweet that you're here. I'm glad to see you. So yeah, it can be pretty sneaky. Sometimes, yeah, it's just something that wastes your time because you're having fun with it, but it's not really efficient. Fun is good. I'm always in favor of fun, but really, there's really a principle which I would like you to keep in mind for everything you do in French. It's that you want to know your goals. You want to know why you're learning French, what are you are shooting at with this journey, because it can be quite a long journey, and it can be a great journey. It can be full of nice surprises. It can be super entertaining and super enriching. But really, it will be more enriching if you know why you're doing it. So you want to know your goals, and you want to always make sure that you're working towards your goals. So that's the principle that should back everything you do. And so to help you with doing that more concretely, we have 7 do's and don'ts on the worksheet, which you can fill in the blanks right now. So without further ado, the first one is too much vocabulary, learning too much vocabulary. And unfortunately, that's very frequent, either too much or vocabulary that's just inadequate, that's not the right vocabulary. I see that all the time. Like I think it was a couple of weeks ago. I should really have a little list of the things that I've done before and when I did it, because every week it's embarrassing. I don't remember when I did what. But there is already a live video which I did a while ago about the thumbnail says vocabulary boss on it, which is how to learn vocabulary. If you think you are struggling with vocabulary, that is really the video you want to go next, because it just gives you all my principles that guide the learning of the vocabulary. So a lot of people, unfortunately, learn too many words, and they have this belief that the more words they know, the easier it will be to speak French. But unfortunately, it's often the opposite. Often, knowing more words will get in your way. You will always, not always, but you will be likely to try and use the exact word instead of relying on the words that you do have. So really, the advice that I give in this area is that if you know some French, any French, you should always try to speak already with the words that you do have, as opposed to learning more words, because at some point, soon enough, when you learn more words, they just get in your way. That includes things like the word of the day. In places like Instagram or Pinterest, it's really cool. You can subscribe to words of the day accounts, and you can collect words on Pinterest boards, and it's fun, it's nice. I would not say not to do that, especially if it entertains you. I mean, I'm always in favor, like I said, of being entertained and having fun. But keep in mind that this is entertainment, and if you are learning French for a particular goal, you really want to put in your notebook the words that matter the most. So no words live in your notebook rent-free. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about now with notebook and words not living rent-free, I strongly recommend watching the Vocabulary Boss, or I think it's How to Learn Vocabulary Like a Boss, the title, videos that I did recently, because that will tell you a lot more about vocabularies. I don't want to elaborate too much on this point, but please keep in mind that one of the best way to waste your time and to get yourself completely confused with French learning is to learn too much vocabulary and not learn the right vocabulary, the vocabulary that's really efficient. So the thing you want to do instead is to learn only the words that are relevant and start using them immediately. That's the main key, one of the main key for vocabulary. The second one is that you don't want to learn words alone. So always want to learn words either in a chunk. Again, that's something I spoke about in the vocabulary lesson, so I don't want to elaborate too much here, but always either in a chunk or with all the relevant data around the words. So that's also something I don't want to elaborate too much on, but if you have no idea what that is, you want to download this. This is free. It's part of the French Fluency Starter Kit. You have the link in the description. And this shows you all the things that, well, there's a long list of do's and don'ts, much longer than here, because it's all about vocabulary. And it shows you all the peripherals, all the little things that you want to learn about each kind of word. So this is really a lifesaver when it comes to learning vocabulary in French. You cannot believe how many people I know who just don't do this. They just do it wrong because they don't know. I do not understand why French teachers don't share this. It drives me nuts to think that so many learners just waste so much time with learning the wrong vocabulary or learning the right vocabulary, but the wrong way. Like, for example, if it's a noun and you learn it without knowing if it's masculine or feminine, soon enough, like when you move further into the grammar, you realize that you need to know the gender of every noun if you hope to use it in a French sentence, but you haven't learned it, so you have to learn it again. So basically, you can double the amount of time you need to learn a word just because you failed to write le or la in front of it in your notebook the first time or when you learned it the first time. And it drives me nuts. Like, you imagine that you could learn hundreds or maybe even thousands of words without writing down these things, and you would have to start over almost from scratch once you realize that you have to do it. So if you've been doing that, I'm sorry. I hate to be the one breaking it to you. Please don't shoot the messenger, but please also stop doing it right now, because it's not helping. Just start writing all the relevant things. It's not very long, and it will save. I mean, it takes a little bit more effort at the beginning to write the words, the noun with the articles, the adjectives with the feminine, and so on. But it will save you so much time in the future. Like, seriously, do it. By the way, if you have been doing and making any of these mistakes, please let me know in the chat. Like, have you made this? Have you done this kind of thing? Have you learned random vocabulary, or tried to collect words, or learned words without the gender, or just try to learn verb without knowing how they're conjugated? Like, just tell me in the chat right now if it's something you have experience with, and if I'm helping you with that, if what I'm saying is helpful, and if it's especially if it's the first time you're hearing it, tell me if it's the first time. I haven't said daily French bath yet, but it's been 10 minutes I've been talking, so at some point I have to speak about it. I don't know if it's even anywhere. No, it's not. But yeah, I said daily French bath because I have to say daily French bath every time. And if you have never heard of the daily French bath, that means you're new here, so welcome. I do have a couple of videos already with daily French bath in the title, so you can watch that next. Linda is saying, yes, when I first started to learn French on my own, I just learned whatever came along, not because I needed it. I've done that too. I've done that with German. I actually spent 10 years trying to learn German before I moved to Austria. And it's really through me moving to Austria, in addition to my master's degree, but also from my own experience of learning German, that I've been really like honing in on those methods. So it's part master degree, part experience of being an expat in a foreign language and having no idea what I'm doing, but finding out little by little. So yeah. Connie's saying I have a fantastic French coach, so I'm doing things correctly. Well, I'm glad you have a great French coach. This is amazing. I would like to know this guy. All right, so these are the first two, the ones about vocabulary. Don't learn too much vocabulary, especially don't learn words that you don't need. And if when you do learn a word, make sure you learn the word with all the peripherals. Otherwise, you will just clutter your brain with words that are useless, or they would be useful, but you can't use them because you don't have everything you need. So that's important. Linda's saying, me too, I wonder if it's the same one. Maybe. There aren't many French coaches, to be honest. I know two, like there's me and Alex. So, all right, so third point, joke aside, third point on this list is grammar that's too complicated and too early. So there's nothing wrong with learning complex grammar. We all want to be doing the wonderful double D sentences. Double D is one thing that I'm keep referring, like I don't think I've ever mentioned it here. It's a grammar thing in English. Like if you say something like I had learned, you have two Ds, had and learned. And that's kind of the thing that's complicated to translate into French because it's complex grammar. So we all want to be making these sentences because we all want to be speaking great French, and French, like we want to be speaking like the adults that we are. We don't want to be speaking like a 5-year-old. Or if we have to speak French professionally, we don't want to be speaking like a kid. That makes sense. But the thing is, if you can't make simple sentences, you will never be able to make complex sentences. And again, I'm sorry to break it to you. If this is new to you, please don't shoot the messenger. But if you can't, it's like if you can't do it slow, you can't do it fast. And this is true for French as well. Like at the beginning, you will be speaking more slowly. You won't be able to speak too fast at first. This is normal. And also, if you cannot make simple sentences or short sentences, you cannot make complex or long sentences. And I see just so many people who just try to cram grammar for their heads. This is also like, I really feel that school is to blame in this case, because at school, you have to test people on something that's easy to test. And unfortunately, grammar is very easy to test, and everything written is easy to test. The easiest thing is to, if you want to create a language test, that's easy. You make a fill in the blank exercise, you give it to your students, and if they can fill in the blanks, to give them a good grade. That's an easy and fast way to test. A lot of schools do it this way, and this is a great way to do it fast, and to just, it does not cost a lot. Like the way that I teach is extremely costly because I teach one-on-one with one student at a time, or even when I teach in the French Fluency Accelerator and I make the workshops specifically that have been requested by the students for their needs, and I adjust it to the people who are live. It's extremely costly, right? It's not something that is affordable to everyone, and especially not to a group of 40 people. Well, I mean, there could be 40 people in the French Accelerator, but you see what I mean, right? You cannot have like a full class of students and do the things that I'm doing. I understand that. I mean, I understand that I'm a very privileged teacher or coach. It's actually a very privileged position to be able to coach a person one by one. It's a great honor to be able to do that. So I'm definitely not blaming the teachers who work in traditional schools. But the fact is, in traditional schools, you have to find a way to do it cheap. And if it's cheap, maybe efficiency is not the first priority. The priority is to find a way to grade the students so they have grades so they move on to the next class. But if, as an adult, you keep working with the same kind of thing because it was the way it was done in school, and like I said, it's well established, it's counterproductive. Their goal was not to make you able to speak French. Their goal was to have some academic topic which is standardized and easy to grade, and it's not at all the same thing. So I think that's the origin of this problem, that a lot of people just learn so much grammar because they feel that if they quote unquote master the grammar, then they'll be able to speak. I mean, it would make some sense to perceive the language as a chunk of words that are organized into some sort of grammar rules. That used actually to be the first perception of languages. When we first started to teach languages academically in the end of the 19th century, that was the way that languages were perceived. For the record, hardly anyone ever, actually, I don't think anyone ever did learn to speak those languages with those methods. And the reason why it was done this way is because originally we used to teach, in France, for example, we used to teach Latin a lot. And Latin is a dead language. And no, like you learn Latin, you never need to speak it. So the way I learned Latin was never oriented towards speaking it at any point. I did Latin for 8 years. I cannot speak it. I don't need to speak it because it's dead. But you cannot use this approach for a living, breathing foreign language and hope to be successful. It doesn't work this way. So if you're not mastering simple grammar, and by mastering, I don't mean being able to do the exercises. I mean being able to speak it, to go out and buy some bread at your French bakery, or to go out and go to a cafe and have a coffee, or have a glass of wine, or go to a restaurant and have food, or to have a very simple conversation with a French person online. If you're not able to do that, do not learn complex grammar. You need to focus on using what you have first. This is really, really important. Like I said, it's the principle. You have to know your goals, and you have to make sure you're working towards your goals. If your goal is to speak French, then you have to start speaking with whatever you have. Because if you cannot speak with what you have, I promise you, you won't be able to speak with more. Of course, if you only know the one word in French, and it's a parapluie, which means umbrella, and then probably, yeah, you need a little bit more. But most people that I meet, they have learned a lot of French already, and you need to go and speak with those words before you learn more. Words and grammar, same story. All right, so there's some activity in the chat. Let's see if there are any questions. Cynthia's saying this makes so much sense. I'm happy to help. I'm really glad I can bring these messages. To me, it makes so much sense that I think it should be obvious. Everybody should know it. Everybody should teach this way, but hardly anyone does. So I'm just going to keep doing it. What you just said, this is Doge. Hi, Doge. Cool to have you here again. It's nice to see you back. What you just said about language learning in school is very true. When I finished French in high school, I was able to use fairly complex grammar, but it would take 20 seconds of logic to say a sentence. To be honest, 20 seconds is not that long. I think you must have been having a pretty fast brain, so congrats. But yeah, of course, like you want it to be immediate, and it's better to speak fast, or rather, to be able to have a conversation with small grammar, small sentences, short grammar, easy grammar, and yeah. All right. So thank you for sharing your experience. This is unfortunately very, very frequent. So let's move on. The fourth one is also about grammar, and it's piggybacking on the previous point. Grammar that's actually useless to anyone. Now, this I don't see very frequently, but I still see it, and it blows my mind when it happens. So in French, we have a lot of tenses. A tense is a different way to conjugate a verb. Recently, I've been showing this book. If you don't have it yet, I recommend getting it. It's the book that the French don't want you to know about, but every single French family that has someone who has gone to school in it or is going to school has this book. They have lots of different editions. Some of them are green. It doesn't really matter, but it has to be La Conjugaison pour tous, because the brand is super successful, and they made other books, some of them about grammar or anything, but I'm speaking about La Conjugaison. And so in this book, for each type of verb, they have a page. So one page is one verb. And each one of those is a tense, okay? So all of that is a different conjugation that you could use in a different kind of context. But here, and you're like, oh my God, that's a lot, especially if you're an English speaker and you only speak English. Yeah, like how can you think that there are these many forms for a single verb? Right, that's a bit overwhelming and scary. But the good news is that there are a lot of those that you don't need to learn, and that no one knows in France, I promise you. That includes those two of the subjunctive, useless completely. Even this one, subjunctive passé, it happens, like I see it once a week, maybe, and once a week is not a lot for someone who deals with French all day, every day. In the indicatif, there's also the passé simple. Sometimes a student comes to me and uses one of those, and I'm like, what? Like, it has not been used outside of a book like at least 100 years. And even in a book, it's still old-fashioned. It's a very literary term that, like, you use it if you are a writer and you want to be fancy, but not if you're a speaker. If you're a speaker, you just look ridiculous. And I mean, of course, if you're a learner, I don't think that you look ridiculous if you use the wrong verb. But if you're a French person and you speak with this tense, you will look ridiculous. I promise you. So if the French don't use it, you really shouldn't try to be learning it. It's useless. There are a bunch of others, like the passé antérieur, extremely rare. Like pretty much half of this you don't have to learn. So don't, like, it's useless. Nancy is saying she got it and thanked me for recommending it. Welcome. The book the French don't want you to know about, because you always wonder how the French know all their conjugations by heart, and the truth is they don't. They have this book. So that was point 4. Don't learn grammar that's useless. Don't learn grammar that's overtly complex. For example, these are the grammar books that I use with my students. This is an old edition. The new one would look like this. But I use these grammar books with my students. What not everybody knows is that there are another 2. So they have 4 colors in total, right? You have, like, in this order. Okay, so beginner, intermediate, upper intermediate, and advanced. There are 4 different colors, but those I never or almost never teach with them. I actually used this one once, and that was with a student who was studying to be a French teacher herself, and she didn't even need it to teach. She needed it to satisfy the university teachers, her university teachers. So that's just how useless this is. Sorry, book. I mean, it's a nice book, but no. Like, you don't want to learn advanced grammar. It's completely useless. So the first half, basically, of grammar, you stand a chance of using it. The second half, nah, no one knows it. No French native knows it. It's not useful. It just isn't. Which, following up on this topic, number 5, old-fashioned ways of speaking. And this, I see it actually, unfortunately, quite a lot. The more advanced the student is when they come to me, the more likely I am to see it. Especially if you're an older person, like older, I don't know, if you're 50, 60, you're already older by this metric. Sorry, I don't mean to call you old, but the fact is, if you have had French in school some 30, 40 years ago, you're more likely to have had some teachers who were obsessed with old-fashioned ways of speaking than if you're now 20 years old and you haven't had French in school and you've only learned French online. So yeah, but old-fashioned ways of speaking is a really bad habit of some French teachers that, like, and I mean, I understand that when you start learning French, or when you decide to take on a French learning journey as in, educated adult, you want to speak French the right way. Like, you don't want to speak like a street kid. That makes sense. But there's a world of difference between speaking French in a way that is, let's say, stylish, in a way that a French adult, a professional adult, like someone who, works in an office, or someone who maybe has a business, like a middle-sized business, or even a CEO of a big company, like the language that those people use, or a lawyer or anything. I mean, I guess lawyers have a different ways of speaking a bit, but, business owners or doctors. I do work with a lot of doctors. Yeah, so there's a world of difference between the way that these people actually speak in real life in a way that they sound professional and respectable, and old-fashioned manners of speech that nobody uses. It's like I said, the passé simple, no one uses it in speech. The 2 subjonctif passé, no one uses that. And even things like the ne as a negation. So I can say je n'ai pas d'enfant, which is I don't have children. You have ne pas, it's the 2 parts of the negation. If you have learned any French, you probably know that. The thing is, if I'm speaking to another French person, I'm not going to say je n'ai pas d'enfant. I would say j'ai pas d'enfant. So I would skip the ne, and I would skip the ne almost every time. Like, I think even if I write an email to my financial advisor, who's a French woman, because for the record, if you don't know, I live in Vienna, Austria, but my financial advisor is a French woman here as well. I think even if I write an email to her, I might not put the ne in writing. So that's how almost extinct this is. So you don't need to use the ne, especially not in speech. So please watch for old-fashioned ways of speaking. If you speak to a French person and they tell you that this is old-fashioned, or like they smile a little bit when you speak, yeah, if you're speaking and the French are smiling, you can be like, okay, why are you smiling? And if they tell you that something is old-fashioned or that no one speaks this way, listen to them and just quit it, because often it's very complex. It's difficult to learn. I mean, think of this ne pas thing. You have to know where to put it. And then if it's in the past, you have to wait. So, je n'ai pas appris ma leçon. Okay, ne pas, n'ai pas. And it's complicated. So there's really not a reason to learn it. Of course, you need to adjust this to your goals, because, for example, one of my clients works for the United Nations and he has to write reports for the United Nations. So in those reports, you would need to use this ne, for example. But yeah, I really recommend that you listen to actual natives, the way that they are speaking, and especially the way they speak to each other, and trust that you will pick up their way of speaking and know what's old-fashioned. I mean, if you know a way of speaking and no native ever uses it, it's probably something old-fashioned. In doubt, you can ask. It's the kind of questions that you can actually bring to me. And when we're done with the content here, you can definitely ask me any question about that. Or like at any, not just today, but at any session, if you're like, okay, do you actually use this phrase in French? And I can answer you. Or you can ask any native that you know. Or it could be a good idea to also learn with tutors. For example, on italki, they have a lot of language tutors, which are not actually teachers, but natives. They're not going to be great at teaching you the grammar and the correct way and at explaining to you why things are this way. Like, this is something that I could do. I can explain you pretty much why anything is like it is. But they will be very good at knowing what the natives actually say. So it could be a good idea, for example, to have a coach like me who you work with one-on-one or in the French Accelerator, or you work with me to just, learn it like square and the right way, basically, and to also have tutors or language learning partners with whom you practice speaking and you learn how natives really speak more in a relaxed manner. So I hope this makes sense. If you have any questions, please ask them. That was point 5. We have 2 points left. Linda is asking, for what's common popular speech, not necessarily what is correct. Yes, exactly. So it is, the thing is, correct is, it is a bit of a philosophical debate, to be honest. So I don't know how much I want to ramble on this topic, but every language, every natural language, for example, French or English or German, or, not a constructed language like Esperanto, but a natural language. Every natural language has been somehow policed at some point by some people. So for French, it happened a lot at the Renaissance, when the people there started to feel that the language was, French is something that evolved naturally from Latin. So at some point, the people in France, in what is currently France, were speaking Latin, or like they were conquered by the Romans, and Latin was the language that was most imposed, but they were not really educated in Latin, so they just kind of like spoke it the wrong way. There are a lot of like French words that are actually descended from Latin slang words. For example, la tête, if you know the word la tête for the head, let me write it down if you don't know it. This word, la tête, it comes from Latin word testa, because if you have a hat in French that was an S before, testa, it means bottle in Latin. Why? Because the soldiers in the Roman Empire, they would just refer to la tête as the bottle. It was just a slang term. And there are lots of words like that. For example, you might know that horse in Latin is, I think, equis or something like that. It's actually this root, and you find it in a lot of horse-related topics, like équitation, for example. But in French, the word for horse is cheval, and that comes from a slang word for horse in Latin. So it's very frequent that languages evolve this way into some sort of like common slang manner, and then at some point, some people who have authority for some reason, they're like, okay, like that's complete BS. We are gonna straighten up the language. We are gonna make it be this way and this way, or they do it a different way with, like, they pick a dialect over another one, and they decide that this dialect is superior and that all the others are crap. And therefore, everyone should strive to speak in this particular dialect. And it's what's correct. It's what at some point someone in power has decided is correct for a reason that suits them and that privileges them. So I don't love the idea of what's correct, because it's, yeah, I mean, I guess I will struggle with that for the rest of my career. Every time I speak with a new student, they will come tell me, and like, teach it to me the correct way. Like, and I can tell you, yeah, in traditional French grammar, there is this rule and this rule and this rule, but this is not really how we do it. This is not really how we speak. And if you actually respect it, it will be weird. For example, there are rules who would require that you use the subjunctif imparfait. If you have watched the workshop about subjunctif in the French Accelerator, you know what I'm talking about. There are rules that would require you to use it, but no one ever uses it ever, ever, ever. So don't. Right. I hope that was a fine ramble to answer this question. But yeah, like use what's common or popular. Like use the thing that's mostly used by natives, not necessarily what some people, some dudes in 300 years ago have thought is correct. Okay, so Tony is here. Sweet to have you here again. In a lot of schools in England, they used to the very old textbooks, 2 decades old when I was at school. Things have moved on. Yeah. Again, because they have to do it cheap, and if somehow they feel that the books are still working, why not use them? I mean, I had really old textbooks at school as well, and yeah, it's like I said, school is trying to be efficient in their way of being efficient. So if inefficient in school means cheap, it's basically like you get some teaching done and you get some grading of the students, and the students are passing through the system somehow, and that's what they call efficiency. What I call efficiency is that when the students study with me, they actually become able to speak French. Completely different goals. So Cynthia is saying she always worried about using the formal versus informal, for example, vous versus tu. I'm 68 and you're right about the difference with how I learned so long ago. Yep, I still, as a French person, use vous in most cases, except online. Online, when I meet someone, I would always use tu. It's kind of fun when I'm on a dating app and the person, because I live in Austria, sometimes I meet someone on a dating app who speaks French because they learned it or she learned it and speaks to me as vous. I'm like, whoa, that's not the mood here. If you start saying vous to me, I'm like, I feel like I'm 50 years old and I'm like the director of a bank or something. Which even if I would meet a 50-year-old bank director on a dating app, I still wouldn't say vous to them, but there would be a different context. But in dot, use vous is still a good rule. Like if you're in France and you are going to speak to someone and you're not completely sure it's a tu situation, then you want to use vous. And if you're wrong, the person will tell you, aha, no, you can say tu, like tu peux me dire tu. And it's much more comfortable to be wrong in this direction than in the other one. Because if you say tu to the wrong person, worst case scenario, it could backfire on you. If it's really someone who's in a position where they're used to hearing vous and you suddenly say tu to them and they don't realize that you're just a foreigner and you don't know. I mean, I cannot think of something really bad that would happen, but they won't be in the best mood if you do that. So, and you always want to try to make the conversation more smooth as you can. So in dot, use vous is still a great rule. The difference between writing saying gonna go versus going to go. Yeah, exactly. So if I were speaking English and I would say going to go very clearly, you would understand it, but you would also probably know that I'm not a native. I mean, I'm sure you know it from my accent, but you also know that I'm just someone who speaks a bit like a book. So yep, definitely that's that. You say ekin in English. Good to know. Equus, a movie about horse, and hippo. Oh, hippo is Greek. Yep. Monsieur le Président, ça va? Exactly, Tony. That's what I'm saying. You do not do that. You do not go, Monsieur le Président, ça va. I think actually someone did it to Macron, like a kid, a high school kid. Well, like, hey, Manu, ça va? And Macron told him off because you don't do that. He didn't even say Monsieur le Président. He said Manu, it's his name, right? Emmanuel. So Manu is short for Emmanuel. But you don't say that to the French president. You just don't. You say Monsieur le Président, comment allez-vous? All right. Cynthia's saying very helpful. I won't be so close on. Good. I'm happy I can help. All right. So I have another 2 points on this list. So the sixth one is a really, really big one. It's focusing on writing when your goal is to speak. So again, the principle is that you want to make sure that you have the right goal and that you want to move towards that goal steadily, and that you're actually moving in that direction. And unfortunately, I see it a lot. It's very sneaky because, like, again, schools have a much easier time evaluating writing than speaking. Even if you do free writing and you have to actually correct the full text of a student, it still is a lot easier to get a stack of text and correct them than to get every student one by one and speak to them, or even to get every student to like record a tape, which is something I actually did in high school, but it was very state of the art at the time to record yourself on a tape for speaking. That was in the English class, and we had a really big focus on English in my school, so that's why we got the exceptional chance of recording ourselves on tape. But still is not the same as having an actual conversation with a person. So yeah, technical reasons why the schools will make you write a lot instead of making you speak. But if your goal is to speak French, if your goal is to go to France and have fun during your trip and meet people and just do all sorts of speaking things, then you have to speak. Sorry to break it to you. I know it's a lot more comfortable for many people to practice writing, but if your goal is to speak, you have to only write as a way to support your speaking. And this is actually a very big part, or not part, but a very big pillar of my coaching. Whenever I have a coaching client, almost every one of them, I speak to them once a week. They speak to me a lot. I make them speak as much as I can. And then they have some homework, which is written. But I always insist that the writing is the only goal of writing is to support what they have learned. So I will try to give them an exercise which makes them use the things that they have learned during the session. So for example, if they have a grammar point and we are working on learning the past, because the past is like the first big challenging thing. So many people spend a number of weeks on just very much solidifying the past tenses in French. When you're able to speak in the past, speak about what you did yesterday with the correct tenses, you can definitely consider yourself to be a intermediate or even lower advanced student. So if I have been introducing some past tenses or helping the students to solidify those past tenses, I will give an exercise, a writing exercise, which will have them use those tenses. And an advantage of doing that is that when you write, you can think a lot more. So it helps you really understand what you're doing, and then you'll be able to do it faster when you speak. That is to say, if you speak at all, because if you skip the speaking part, yeah, you're learning some French and you might become able to actually write in French, not speak, but write in French, but you won't speak. And at the risk of, saying a tautology, you don't speak until you speak. Like you have to keep in mind that if it is your goal to speak, then speaking has to be your primary objective. And if you do some grammar exercises or if you do some writing, it's cool, but they have to be supportive of your speaking, not getting in the way or being like suddenly becoming your like short-term goal, and maybe one day later you'll speak, because it doesn't work this way. It just doesn't work. So try to refocus on speaking as much as you can, and when you're doing something other than speaking, keep in mind, okay, is this helping me speak better? Like if you're learning vocabulary using this and the vocabulary notebook, for example, are those the words that you will want to use in speech? And if no, they have nothing to do in your notebook. Just like zip them. Like, they don't live in there rent-free. If they're being useless, kick them out. So yes, Linda is saying I write much better than I speak, so sometimes I write something just to feel successful. Yeah, I know you do that, actually. I'm well aware that you do this, and I don't think it's bad, but I think that it is important to focus on speaking as much as you can. And unless you have a secret goal of becoming a writer in French, which, it's fine if you do, just let me know. Because, yeah, that's... with the goal of speaking, you just have to keep speaking. Connie is saying, I love listening to myself, and I find myself singing along to it. I might not know what I'm saying, but I do mimic what I hear. It's a start. It is a start. If you're not doing it yet, I would recommend pulling the lyrics of the sentence, of the song, just to make sure that you are actually singing the same thing that you hear. Or you could watch karaoke videos, or you could watch videos with subtitles of the songs. And so you make sure that you sing the actual thing that they are saying, even if you don't understand it. It's actually fine not to understand what you're singing or what you're listening to. Like I said in the few daily French bath videos that I've made, not understanding is not the goal. The goal is to have some French around you and to be doing as much French stuff as you can. So yep, it's fine. Keep it up. It's a great practice. And finally, the last one. Number 7, my pet peeves, addictive apps and yaourté. Yes, that's what it means. In French, we have the word yaourté, or chanter en yaourt, and that means yogurt singing, and that's when you sing and you don't really know and it doesn't sound like anything. Kenny is saying, I know I do all of that, but there's no way I can remember an entire decade of music. It's okay. Like it's fine. If you have watched it, if you've done it once, with you've watched the lyric once and you've done it, it's in your brain. So when you sing, it will be close enough. So yeah. Or do it again periodically, like every 20 times you do that song. Yep. There's an app called Lyrics Training. It's like a game. You listen to the song with the lyrics rolling with some blanks, and you have to fill in the blanks. Oh, that sounds fun. That is exactly my point. However, with number 7, I don't know if this app counts as what I have on number 7 because it seems to be interesting. But addictive apps and misleading gamification. So with apps, you have to be really careful. I find it really fun that each time I look at the statistics of my website, the blog article, my website is frenchfluency.net, by the way, if you want to visit it. The blog article that has the most hits, or the page on my website that has the most readers by far, it's not even me who wrote it, it's a guest post, but it's about the best apps to learn French. It was written by a guest offered me to write it for me, and I was like, sure, put it there. And I was totally not expecting that, but it is the most successful page on my website. A lot of people are looking for apps to learn French. Now, I have nothing against apps as a principle. I do recommend some apps. I recommend Anki and Quizlets a lot for vocabulary. If you don't like to have a notebook, I think it's a great alternative. Apps are not bad as long as they are tools and they are at the service of your goals. So that's always, again, the principle. Make sure that you are working towards your goals and that you're not being misled by someone else's goals. So that could be a school whose goal is to just grade you and let you go without making sure that you speak, or it could be an app, and we're all guilty of that one. I mean, I've been a really big Duolingo user for a very long time. I've probably started not every language, but maybe, I don't know, 10 or 12 different languages on Duolingo. I only speak 6 languages, so that tells you how many I was not successful about. And all the 6 languages that I speak, none of them was taught to me by Duolingo. Like, I all learned them by other means. So if you like using Duolingo, I don't blame you. I think it's fine. I think it's cool to do things that are enjoyable, but make sure that you know that it's a game. It's not actually teaching you French. You might learn one thing here or two, and it's okay to use it. But if you use only Duolingo and you hope to magically start speaking French one day, it's not going to work. And unfortunately, I haven't seen it recently so much. I think it's because people who now come in touch with me one-on-one, they actually have watched my videos before coming to speak to me, so they know. But a couple of years ago, when I was less YouTube-y, and when I was having less content online, people would come to me and would tell me, oh, I've been doing Duolingo for 2 years, but I don't speak French now. It doesn't work. Like, what happened? And I was like, yeah. The thing is, it was never the Duolingo's goal to make you speak French. Like, Duolingo is an app, and they only get investors if they have lots of users. So their only goal is to really keep you on the app. And if you actually learn French and you reach your goal, it probably won't stay on the app. So they actually have a vested interest not to teach you. Now, I don't want to specifically bash them or anything like that. It's just you have to know. You have to know what they're about. And if it works for you, if it helps you, if it entertains you, by all means, keep doing it. But do not believe that that alone will teach you French, because it won't. It just won't. Maybe it will teach you a couple of words and a couple of grammar structures. So that's it. And in general, I would put also in that point misleading gamification. And even actually in the French Fluency Accelerator, we have some misleading gamification. There's a progression bar. It's part of the structure. And if you go there, it will show you how many of the workshops or how many of the units you have already watched. And you have a progression bar, and you can feel a sense of completion if you have watched everything, although it's almost impossible at this point because the French Accelerator has become huge and you get access to everything when you sign up, and you get new content every month. So it's really difficult to watch everything, and especially it doesn't lead anywhere. What really helps with the French Accelerator or any class is to learn something and then go use it. It's always that, because the goal is not to watch an entire course. I mean, if you join the French Accelerator with the goal to watch it entirely, I don't know why you would do that. You can watch it entirely, of course, like it's possible. But really, your goal is to learn French and to speak French. So it is cool to be able to refer to a workshop in particular. I do that all the time with my one-on-one clients. Like, they all get access to the entire program. And when I'm teaching those students, I tell them, okay, now is a good time for you to watch the workshop about pronouns, or the workshop about adjectives, or the workshop about speaking in the past. We have 3 workshops about verbs now, which is one about verbs in general, one about the past, and one about subjunctive. And I really like having this material because it helps me really focus my one-on-one teaching onto the students' speaking ability, and then tell them on their own time to watch the workshop to learn more grammar. So it's efficient to use it this way. It's also efficient if you're not having a one-on-one relationship with me, but you're just in the program and you know where to go next. That's efficient this way. You can use the Facebook group to ask, okay, I have this situation and this situation, what do I do next? And I will give you advice. But if you go into there with the goal of watching everything and then thinking that after you've watched everything, you magically speak French, it doesn't work this way. And I'm not too happy that there's a progression bar. I might look into maybe turning it off. I mean, it was there, so I was like, yeah, I don't mind. But yeah, lots and lots of classes, especially online classes, have these progression bars where, like, when you reach 100, you feel that you've done something, and they do that on purpose. They know that it gives you this feeling. But you've done something when you have actually done something. So I would always recommend to feel accomplished when you have actually successfully completed your task, as we say at the French teachers say it this way. But your task could be go to a bakery and buy some bread. If you go to the bakery, you speak French to the person, you pay, you get some bread in return, then you get to enjoy your bread or your pastry, or go to the restaurant, order a coffee. If you get the coffee that you wanted to have and you did everything in French, that's success. That's progress. Like you get to pat yourself on the back for that. But if you have binge watched an entire course and you have reached 100% in the progression bar, no. And to be honest, I mean, I do it. Like, I'm not blaming anyone because I do it myself. I'm a really big online courses junkie. I buy online courses all the time, and then I binge watch them, and then I'm like, okay, like, how do I apply that again? Sometimes I like to watch them entirely and then start over and see, like, okay, how do I actually apply them? Sometimes I forget to start over because I'm like, I've just watched that one. But it doesn't work this way. Like, let's be honest, like, it's fine if you enjoy it. And I mean, I enjoy it, so I'm not going to blame myself for doing it, and I'm not going to blame you as well. But you have to know that your goal is your goal. Your goal is not to watch a course. So I hope this makes sense. This was the end of the 7 points that I have. I see I've been rambling for 47 minutes, and we have a lot of in the chat again. But I'm happy to open the floor to any question that you have or any experience that you'd like to share. So the chat is yours. I see we have 10 people here still, so that's amazing. Thank you for still being here with me. And please ask any question. I'll just start answering what's in the chat right now. So Laurie, is that how you pronounce your name? Laurie is here. Sweet to see you. I think I've only seen you in the comments previously, so I'm glad you could make the live. In French, a comment. So, bonjour Angèle, mon problème est que je dois penser à la phrase en anglais et ensuite la traduire. Parfois, mon cerveau et mes lèvres ne sont pas synchronisés, c'est pourquoi je suis lent à parler. Yeah, so I'm going to answer that in English just so everyone would understand it. So Laurie's problem is that she still thinks in English, and she thinks of the sentence in English before she translates it. It is... Linda never even noticed the progression bar. Maybe it's not there. Maybe I did toggle it off. I'll have to check that. Yeah, so thinking in English until speaking in French, before speaking in French, is a problem that I'm well aware of. A lot of my students have this problem. I am currently still working on just finding out how to really reliably help another person think in French. Because it's complicated, it's tricky, and have done an extensive research online to try and find out if some people had cracked it. And apparently, no, it's not a scientific object of research, which is very unfortunate. I wish we had a scientific study on that topic. That will help my work so much. But I do have a couple of plans. I want to make meditation tracks to try and help with that. I've been thinking also about making maybe subliminals, because for some reason people on YouTube love subliminals, and maybe it would help. So yep, please stay tuned. See if it will stay tuned with what's coming up on this channel next. There will certainly be some tools to try and help with that. But it's all a big experiment. It's all a big throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. In my experience, and I know it's not what you want to hear, but thinking in French is something that just happens. Like it starts happening at some point. I know that it starts happening with smaller chunks of words and smaller sentences first, and that it builds this way. I know that because I've been observing it in some students. I know that some students have been reporting to me that sometimes some words or some expressions come to them in French directly, and that is the beginning of thinking in French. Now, it is also true, for example, for me, that when I'm just musing in my head, some expressions will come to me in other languages, and it just seems to be how the brain works. Like it just sometimes connects languages, and even when you think of, for example, English, you have a je ne sais quoi or déjà vu, and these are French expressions that are in the English language. So languages exchange words like that. It just seems to be how the French brain works, but it takes a certain amount of time to build the competence of totally thinking in French and not thinking in English at all. That's yeah, that's normal. I'm sorry that I can't give a much more to the point answer. No one has this answer. Like I can certify to you that no one knows, but I'm definitely going to keep digging and see what I can do. I've been starting to work with energy work with some clients to see if that helps, and it seems to help. So I'll definitely make some tracks in the future, and I hope we'll find it and we'll come to something that reliably works. So yeah, please stay tuned and use the comment sections on those tracks when they eventually exist. Yep. All right. So she says, merci pour le conseil. Merci à toi, de rien. So Tony's saying all these things like middle school, early years French is a way of learning rote phrases and some other vocabulary. De quelle couleur is probably old-fashioned, I guess. No, I wouldn't consider de quelle couleur old-fashioned, but probably you learn, for example, to ask de quelle couleur est ce bracelet? And what I would say nowadays is, okay, ce bracelet est de quelle couleur? So the phrase de quelle couleur I would still use, but I would put the words in a different order. And de quelle couleur est ce bracelet? That's definitely something more written and more formal. I wouldn't even use it in a text, and only perhaps in an email. That's rather formal. Maybe to my financial advisor, I would still start the sentence with de quelle couleur, and then I would say de quelle couleur est votre bureau or whatever. So yeah, it's not old-fashioned. You can use it. They're saying, me too, Laurie, come sit with me. We're working on it. We're gonna find it. Like in a couple of months, it's gonna be only a. I'm sure, Linda, it's getting better for you. So I'm sure in a couple of months it will just be a memory and be like, oh, because when it happens, like for real, and it will be like, oh my god, like how could I not think in French? Like once you have it, it's like flipping a switch, and you don't remember how it was not to have it. And the fun fact is that if you learn a third language afterwards, it's actually a lot easier to start thinking in the third language than it was to start thinking in the second language. Like for example, I know it's gonna not make you feel great when I say the ages, but I started learning English when I was 10, right? But I only really started thinking in English when I was, I think, 14. So that's 4 years. And remember, that was me being a kid, and that was me being in school and having nothing else to do, right? And I had an intensive amount of English, and I went to England in a school trip, and that's basically when it happened. Like I think it helped for me to be immersed to be in England and have the ability to be fully surrounded by the language, which is why I recommend the Daily French Bath so much. But yeah, it was roughly at that time that I started thinking in French, and that is also the year when I started learning Spanish. And by the next year, and honestly, the second language, you just don't learn much of it. But by the next year, so only barely a year after I started Spanish, I was already able to think in Spanish, even though I knew very little Spanish. Like there's no relation between how much of the language you know and the ability to think in the language. You could know the entirety of the French dictionary and still not be able to think in French. But yeah, between the moment when you learn to think into, like the moment when you first start learning your second language and the moment when you actually think in your foreign language, your second language, it can take a very long time. And it's just this way. Sorry, that's all I know. I feel terrible being an expert and have to say that I don't know something which sounds like the central topic of my a central part of my topic. But to be honest, no one knows it, and there doesn't seem to be any scientific research done on that, or at least I haven't found it. So yep, if you find some, please send it to me. I would love to read it. But yeah. Okay, so Connie is asking, oh wait, no, there's a question by Doge first. I've been struggling with preposition to verb, essayer de instead of essayer a. Is there some trick to know them or just have to learn them by heart like non-genders? Yeah, second option, sorry. What I like to recommend to my clients who have this problem, meaning everyone who's an intermediate student and beyond, is you take your vocabulary notebook. I've got myself this new notebook. It's completely blank right now, but you take a new page of your notebook, and at the top you write verbs with de, or like verb de, for example, and you write essayer de. I don't know, like I'm not gonna find verbs with de now. Essayer de, demander à quelqu'un de faire quelque chose. Yeah, so you write all your de verbs together, and you write all your a verbs together, and then you learn them together. I find that this is the easiest way to learn them. But yeah, you have to learn them. I don't even know that the daily French bath helps so much with that, because it's easy to miss them. So yeah, the good news, however, is that if you get it wrong, no one will care. Like the French will realize that you make a mistake because they never would make this mistake, but it will not stop you from being understood. And I think someone who would consider that to be a bad mistake would be a complete a-hole, like, you know, to be straightforward about that. So yeah, happy to help. So Connie is saying, listening to French, I try to pick out words I know, but I am not getting context clues when I hear glass, worm, or green. They all sound the same. Is there a slight difference that I can listen for? Ah, ver. No, there isn't. It sounds the same. It is spelled differently, but it sounds the same. Absolutely. So yeah, context. That's all I can say. If you had an exact example of context, I could tell you more about like what would be the cues in those cases. But yes, and Tony is saying and ver. Wow, you know this one? Seriously? Yeah, it's true that there are 4. So glass, ver. There are 5 actually. These are the 5 that exist. I hope I'm not missing anyone. But ver with double R-E is glass. Ver with V-E-R is worm. Damn, sorry, I spelled the second one wrong. I'm just gonna do it again. Wait. Let me remove this one. That's how it should be. So glass, worm, the third one with the T is green. Then there's ver with A-I-R. This is a useless word that you should never learn as per really not really here, but it's a useless word. It means it's a kind of fur, So it's not useful, like unless you're really, really advanced. And the last one is towards, the one with the S. Thank you. I didn't think there was a difference I could listen for. No, there is no difference. Sorry, I can't help with that. Okay, so Cynthia is asking, can one look at the ending of a noun to determine masculine or feminine most of the time? So if you're asking about statistics, I don't think it's most of the time, but it's often enough that it's worth learning them. And there is a video on this channel which is something like how to know if a noun is masculine or feminine. And it has, I made it in, like, it looks like a flashcards, but it's a video. I used a slides show on it, and I show you the end, and you can guess if it's masculine or feminine. There are exceptions, but often the exceptions, I just wrote them on the slides, so that can really help you. If you have learned a lot of words without learning the peripheral as per question 2 on this list, and you're now in a situation where, like, I don't know the gender, I need to learn the genders, that can really, really help to learn those endings. And I do spend a certain amount of time in my one-on-one coaching telling the students, like, yeah, sion is feminine, mon is masculine, and so on, because it helps. Like, it really, really helps. So if you haven't watched this video, or even if you have watched it, but you don't know it by heart yet, I recommend watching it and maybe writing down the endings, or like a way to remember them, because it can really help. And I made it like a little game, and you can count the number of points that you get and tell me in the comments how many points you had, how many of them you got right. And it can really help you solidify. Sometimes it's an intuition. Sometimes you might have an intuition that the words that end in mon are masculine, but you don't know if it's always the case. And so being able to know that it is with this video, that video is really helpful. Or sometimes like thing like age, the age ending is typically masculine, but there are, I think, 5 exceptions, like une image. And if you know that une image is feminine and you think that, oh, age must be feminine because une image is feminine, that's when you get it wrong, but because it's masculine almost always. So that, like, please watch that video, and when you have, leave me a comment there, and because it helps. I swear it helps a lot. Linda saying, I feel it would be similar to a mechanical skill in that respect, like riding a bike, you can't, and then you can, and you can't undo that again. About thinking in French, yes, I think it is. I don't think we can consider it mechanical, although maybe it is. I'm not a neurolinguist. I don't know that much about the brain. I mean, I know a lot about the brain, but I don't know if it can be considered mechanical, but it certainly, it feels like it. And maybe the mechanical skill of riding a bike also has a similar brain process. It's like suddenly your neural pathways fire automatically while previously they didn't. So, yep. Ooh, so many new messages. Well, thank you, everyone. Oh my God, it's already more than an hour. I'll try to go through and see if there are any questions left. I need precision in my speech and writing, which can hinder. I'm not sure I understand this question. Can you maybe specify? Then Tony is saying, apparently Disney mistranslated the bear slipper into a glass one in Cinderella. It's worse than that. There are several variants of the myth. And in some variants, it is a fur slipper, and in some variants, it is a glass slipper. And I find that fascinating that even in the original myth, there is this difference. And I don't know if it comes from French, but I think Cinderella is not originally French. I think it's German, Count Aschenputtel. I confuse them because there are lots of different variants, but I think it's Andersen. That would not be German, that would be Dutch. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just not going to speak about that. I'm not an expert in fairy tales. If you know, please let me know. Tony's saying the gender endings video is very cool. Yes, thank you. Thank you for backing it up. Yeah, Cynthia will look for it. Yep, totally. Like, just do it. That's a fun video, especially when La Sentinelle is a man. Yeah, that's the thing. Like the priorities of the French language. One day I will make a video about this thing because you requested it, and it's in the making. I'll make a live about that. But yeah, priorities of the French language. This top 3 priority. Number 3, depict reality. Number 2, respect grammar. And number 1, sound good. And so La Sentinelle is a respect grammar thing, like 100%. A word that ends in L is feminine no matter what. And the sentinel is feminine. We do not care that probably 99.9% of sentinels in the world are male. Like, I mean, nowadays there can be women in the army, so I'm sure it happens that a sentinel is a woman, but La Sentinelle is always feminine, no matter the gender of the actual person. Grammar does not care about the gender of the actual person. And I actually had a situation like that this morning when I was correcting my students' homework, because one of my students was writing about her boyfriend's profession, and he's a metal worker. So his colleagues are almost all male. Like, this is a very male profession. Almost everyone's a man in that profession. And she was saying something about the person, this and that. And the thing is, une personne, it's feminine in French. It always is feminine in French. It does not matter the actual gender of the person that you're referring to in real life. Une personne is feminine, and then all the adjectives that go with it are going to be in feminine, because as you probably know, we also have to adjust the adjectives for gender in French because it's such a fun language. And so, of course, the student kind of forgot about that and put the adjectives in masculine because, well, first, in English, you don't have to make them agree, so that's something. And 2, they're all male. Like, why would you put the adjective in feminine? Well, you would, because grammar trumps reality in French every time. So Doge is saying they watched it multiple times. Yep. As long as you don't know all of those by heart, you can keep watching the video, and because it will help you more every time. So yeah. Tony, une image, la cage, la rage, la page, la plage. Great, you know all the exceptions. Amazing. All right, so I'm got to the bottom of the chat. Thank you so much for playing along with me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you live every month. I have to go because first, it's been more than an hour, and second, you might start seeing that it's getting dark here. I don't know why, because the sun is still up, but I guess the weather was so bad today that it's just getting dark. So I'm not going to have enough light for this video. But anyway, it's time to go. But thank you so much for being here. I will be back next Sunday. This is a little reminder that you can get the worksheets and much more good stuff on my Telegram channel. So if you haven't joined my Telegram channel yet, please join. And I still have 3 spots available to start coaching with me in June, next month, basically. So you can go to my website and check that. I think you have the link in the description. It's called The French Transformation, or you just go to my website and you click coaching if that's something you're interested in. I would love to get on a free call with you and see if that would work with your personal goals. And yep, that's going to be it for this week. Of course, the French Fluency Accelerator is always here for you if you want to join. You also have the link in this description. We have a ton of pre-recorded workshops where I don't ramble this much because I have slides and I stay on track. And sometimes I have more than 100 slides, so I have to stick to it. But yeah, we also have them in audio, video, and in PDF format. So I always make a handout of the content of the workshop so that it's easy to review them. So if you prefer to listen or to read, that is fine. The program will work for you as well. And I don't say that often enough, and people actually don't know that there are handouts and even cheat sheets. I have this one lying around here because I was teaching today. It was helpful. I made this cheat sheet for the French Accelerator students. If you're in the French Accelerator and you don't have it yet, download it because it's really going to help you, especially if you're an intermediate or advanced student with the subjunctive. So yep, that was all for today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for still being here. Those is saying these strings are very motivating. I'm so glad. Like, I'm really happy that I can give you motivation and like perhaps direction in your French study, because I see so many people who spin their wheels and just make so many mistakes just because no one has taught them. And honestly, it's heartbreaking. I just wish that, yeah, to me, it feels like common sense, but of course, it's my job. So yeah. All right. So yeah. Thank you, everyone. Like Linda is saying, enjoy what's left of the weekend. For me, it's not a lot because it's 8 p.m., but I'm going to go have some dinner. Bonne journée. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Omowaleyo. Thank you, Connie, Cynthia, Doge, Linda, Tony. Did I quote everybody? I think so. All right. Thank you, guys. I'm going to go now. I'll see you next Sunday. Bye.